Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the national anthems of America and Barbados. Remain standing for the prayer, please.
Good evening. Let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, as we gather here in your presence, we ask, Lord, that you bring peace and tranquility, not only to our friends and family here in New York, but across the world, and especially those in Barbados that we've lost. Lord, as we gather here in the presence of our Prime Minister and her convoy, Lord, we ask that you invoke all that is good in your name, that as we discuss the issues that are affecting Barbados, that you bring some sort of consolation to all, and that you bring peace, that everything that is discussed here will be discussed for your glory, but also for the betterment of Barbados and those who are associated with Barbados. Lord, we grant that as we and those who are on the way, you bring them traveling mercies, and as we leave here, we grant the same mercies. Lord, we ask this in the wonderful and matchless name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Remain standing, please. One more moment. This is the first time we've gathered like this since the pandemic, and we would have lost numerous people, and I'm sure the Prime Minister would like us to take a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. Please sit. Good evening, everyone. Let me acknowledge, of course, the presence of Senator Dr. the Most Honorable Jerome Walcott, our Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. You will see he's by himself at the head table. The Prime Minister and others are on their way. It's General Assembly time, United Nations General Assembly, and the work has begun. So she'll be here shortly. This is a wonderful occasion. It's great that we can meet like this after two plus years. And I'm going to take this opportunity, as I always do, to thank all the wonderful people in the various states in the jurisdiction under the New York Consulate. You have been marvelous, especially during the pandemic. Cannot say enough about the support from Barbadian associations wherever, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and individuals, and all the work you've continued to do throughout this year, especially beneficial to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. As we speak, we're getting ready to send down 10 chairs to replace the aging stock in the pediatric ward, which is our favorite project. You will hear about other things that we have been doing as we go through the evening. I want to pause and say thanks to the people at Downstate Health Sciences University who have been very gracious in allowing us to use this wonderful purpose-built facility. We came here because we actually had 500 people registered for this session. I guess in true Barbadian style, we will get there. But I want to welcome Don Skeet Walker, Vice President of Communications and Marketing, representing SUNY Downstate this evening.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dawn Skeet Walker, and I serve as Vice President of Communications and Marketing here at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University. I'm here tonight to bring greetings on behalf of SUNY Downstate's entire committee of faculty, staff, students, and alumni, and on behalf of President Wayne J. Riley. We are honored to welcome Prime Minister Mia Mottley to our home here. She's been leading the Barbados Labor Party, as you know, since 2008, and she's the first woman in that role. She's also the first woman to be named the Barbados Prime Minister, so that's really awesome. Yes. More than that, she's also a rising and formidable star on the economic and climate change global stages, so we know that she's doing big things, right? So we'd like to welcome Prime Minister Mottley and to thank her for allowing us to share this time with you all, our Bajan brothers and sisters. I'd also like to extend greetings to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, the Most Honorable Dr. Jerome Walcott, the Prime Minister's Office Permanent Secretary, the Most Honorable Elise Jordan, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Permanent Secretary, the Honorable Simone Rudder, Consul General, the Honorable Mackie Holder, the staff of the Permanent Mission to the United Nations and Consul General's Office, Communications Director, Mr. Charles Jung, and personal assistants to Prime Minister Motley, Ms. Ashanta Cadigan, and to you, all of our guests. And a special hello to Councilmember Monique Chandler Waterman. I know she's in the house somewhere. There she is. Welcome. We thank you for being here and joining us tonight. We're delighted to welcome new friends and welcome back our old friends here to SUNY Downstate, so we look forward to connecting with you again. As you all know, we've suffered through a pandemic where we lost quite a few people in this community alone, and this is a critical number to remember. Of the 90% of the people we lost, 90% of those people were, of the number we lost, 90% of those people were Black people dealing with at least 2 or 3 chronic illnesses, such as underlying cases of diabetes, hypertension, et cetera. So it's a critical conversation for us in this community to have the opportunity to have conversations around healthcare, and it's not just here, but it's beyond everywhere else. So that's an important piece and something for us to know. And for those of you who live in the community, it's important to know that you have to take care of yourself. And Downstate is here to help remind you of what or how important it is. So back in 2020, during the peak of the pandemic, our nurses received amazing support from our Barbadian brothers and sisters. They received nutritious lunches and a donation of much-needed PPE supplies, which, of course, as you remember, were in very short supply at the onset of the pandemic. The donations were a joint charitable endeavor by some of tonight's guests, including St. George's alumni, Darrell Jordan alumni, Cambridge Sports Club, and the Consulate Office of Barbados, led by the Honorable Mackie Holder. Some of these phenomenal lunches, I would not have to tell you, were prepared by Bajan-owned Culpepper's Caribbean cuisine, which needs no introduction to a discerning palate. We thank all of these generous donors for their support, and we thank all of you who've supported us. We feel privileged to provide health care services in East Flatbush here, where approximately 54% of New Yorkers born in Barbados reside. So 54% of Bajan people live in this community. So that's a very important number to remember. We're grateful for and look forward to continued collaborative opportunities with you all and to serve our Caribbean brothers and sisters. So on behalf of SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University and President Wayne Riley, welcome Prime Minister Motley, and welcome to everyone for spending the evening with us. Thank you.
One of the things I have to say about Downstate was in the heat of the pandemic, as the death toll came through the Barbadian community, and we were meeting almost every couple of days with associations and in an effort to build spirits and keep one another. There was a guy who was here, Jasper Bob Hewitt, a Barbadian. I don't know where he's disappeared to. Jasper was, I guess we counted him dead like 20 times. He was in hospital, I believe, for more than 2 months. And the story is, this particular nurse at Downstate said, Jasper Hewitt will not die. And he did not. But the thing about that, though, is that we were actually having an association meeting when the news came that Jasper was released. And I cannot tell you what that did for the spirits of the Barbadian community in New York. So, on behalf of a good man and all Barbadians and all people in New York, I want to thank Downstate for the great work in very, very troubling and hard times. Let me acknowledge the Mayor of Plainfield, Mayor Adrian Mapp, and Mrs. Amelia Mapp, First Lady Amelia. A good Barbadian. At this time, I shall introduce a gentleman who is excellent and has been excellent in 2 careers. He's actually a surgeon, by profession, so quite at home in these surroundings. I don't know whether he should have stayed there. But in any event, we are blessed to have someone like Dr. Jerome Walcott leading Barbados in many different ways. I should not speak personally, but I should tell you that in my lifetime, I have not come across many people like him. He's not only hardworking, he's not only diligent, he's not only knowledgeable, but he's just a very nice gentleman, which is an unusual thing in politics. During the pandemic, little Barbados, we were getting PPE, we were getting donations and so on. All of that was due to the work done previously, and especially in his role as the person who established the Caribbean CARFA, which is the health organization in the Caribbean. And that is how we got PPE. He has done tremendous work in the last couple of years, even during the pandemic, reaching beyond our traditional partners and bridging the gap, as we should have done long ago, with our African brethren and others outside England, Canada, and so on. Small Barbados, if we are to go into the future with confidence, we have to make a way for ourselves. We can see that very clearly. And the work that Dr. Walcott has been doing here, there, and everywhere, establishing missions in Panama. And I want to give a shout out, as they say, to our Panama family that we connected with last year. Panama, if you can stand, some of you who are here. So for the first time last year in New York, we made the connection with the Panamanian community, which is a natural fit, of course, if you know Barbados history. Barbadians built the Panama Canal, along with Jamaicans and others, but mainly Barbadians. And our roots are in Panama. And the Panamanians have been with us. They've supported us. They've always been there. And this year, we're going to be with them again on Panama Day and on other occasions. And I invite you to join us. But for the first time, we have a mission in Panama. We have an office in Ghana. We have in Kenya. And we're going to be going other places, as I'm sure Senator Walcott will tell you. He was honored recently, fittingly, and he's properly Senator Dr. the Most Honorable Jerome Walcott, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and Senior Minister responsible for the social services sector, Dr. Walcott.
Thank you, CG. I was wondering for a few moments what else you were going to say about me. Right, Cicely? Good evening to all of you. Mayor Adrian Mapp of Plainfield, your wife, Mrs. Dawn Skeet Walker, the Vice President of SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University. Barbadians, friends of Barbados, welcome, and very good to see you again. Applaud yourself for being here. At the outset, I want to say how pleased I am to be here, but I'm skeptical as I say so. I first came here after we won the elections in 2018. At that time, I spoke to you about the dire economic situation which we had encountered as a new government. And thereafter, in 2019, again, I came here, it wasn't in this building, but it was another place. We spoke to you, And I was telling you how we had begun to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then came COVID. We weren't here in 2020 because there was no traveling. But we were here in 2021. And we had a smaller meeting at the mission because, again, of the COVID restrictions. I told you then that we were seeing a relief as it related to COVID. And then came Omicron, and later the Ukraine invasion. So I see myself, as I tell you, I'm pleased to be here. I don't want to get the impression that I'm a harbinger of things that are evil and ill. But I'm happy to be here and pleased to see you and to speak to you this evening. First of all, I want to commend the Consul General and his staff and the staff of the mission for the very hard work that they have been doing in Barbados. For on behalf of Barbados here and also here, I heard your comments as it relates, Mrs. Skeet Walker, as it relates to the role they played. And I know that the Consul General has been speaking, that he's not only been helping Barbadians, but also other persons. And the kind gesture of providing PPEs and meals for the University Hospital and also for the members of staff, this has to be commended, and certainly the associations that were involved. The St. George Secondary School, the Darrell Jordan Secondary School, and the Combermere, of course. I didn't go there, but I gather that it is an extremely popular school up here, if not in Barbados. Of course, I also have to thank Mrs. Holder, and she is the dear wife of the Consul General, and she has this dedicated project, which is, I don't know, I always forget it. It is called the Care Buddies Project, where she raises funds and provides care buddies for a number of children in the pediatric unit at the QH. And she does this like a labor of love. And also gives other things like she's been assisting with asthmatic inhalers and nebulizers and stuff like this. I don't see her here this evening, Mr. Holder, but I don't see her, can't see her. Please. Thank you, Treva. And as I start, I could not end this without mentioning my dear friend who asked me not to call her name. And since I'm extremely obedient, Cicely and her band of nurses who came to Barbados in the middle of COVID last year when we were asking for assistance, sent a container of supplies to us, but then came physically, worked in Barbados, worked in our health system, worked at Harrison's Point, and this was just giving back to our country, and this has to be commended. This is what we mean by involvement of the diaspora in the country. But now we are seeing, like the rest of the world and like you, an easing off in the situation as relates to COVID. And as I said earlier, I don't want to be too precocious. But it seems to be easing off, and now we continue to be faced with the economic situation, which the Prime Minister most definitely will speak to you about this evening, and that I'm not going to cross there at this point in time. We are watching the presence of monkeypox, which is in the region. We've had one recorded case thus far, and there have been cases in Jamaica. So it is something that we are monitoring closely. And of course, we are monitoring the vicissitudes of social media, which is a special disease in itself, which mixes up the truth, the reality, and the false, and that is another one that we are dealing with. But in all seriousness, the situation has eased considerably as it relates to the COVID pandemic within our country. Many of you would have come for crop over. We've had crop over. We couldn't keep it for 2 years, but we held it this year, different form, and I'm sure several of you came and participated. And we are gradually getting back to life, as we should say, a life of normalcy. We are not complacent. We don't believe that COVID has gone. We believe that we are getting control of it. And we believe that, like here, there is a blend, a nice blend of vaccine-induced immunity and natural immunity because of exposure, and this is helping. And at the end of the day, I believe that we will all say that in spite of the loss of life, that Omicron was a godsend in the end because it became so prevalent, so easily transmissible, that it created this immunity that several of you have, which has helped to dampen the entire process of the pandemic, both here and in Barbados. There's an issue that we have to address, however, which became extremely visible, certainly here and in the Caribbean, and it was surprising in Barbados, because for several decades we had prided ourselves on having an immunization rate of over 90% as related to school-aged children. And with the hysteria and the issues of vaccine and those who are against vaccination, we fear that this will affect us. And certainly I've recognized that you all have been seeing cases of polio in New York. And this is worrying, because for years we were said that polio had been eradicated in the Caribbean. We're saying now that persons over 50 like myself and Maki, you, in spite of your efforts to pretend that you're not there, that you're not yet there, 60 people like me and you, we had that DPT, that diphtheria, polio, tetanus back then in vaccination, and so it gives some protection. But we are seeing a trend, and it happened because of COVID, where because of the issues with the public health sector, a number of children weren't able to come to complete the vaccination schedule for those other diseases. And it is worrying now, because you see the trend of anti-vaxxers creeping in now, where parents are suggesting that their children now should not be vaccinated for other things, like measles and mumps and rubella. And this is an area that we're going to have to pay tremendous attention to. As in Barbados, we now relaunch the vaccines, MMR and vaccines of that sort. We try to get it going again. But my role now tonight is not to take you into the intricacies of the public health sector in Barbados. I am Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and I believe I should speak to you a bit about that area. If time permits, I might venture into some of the other ministries that apparently I have, what do you call it? Not responsibility, not responsibility. I watch from afar. That's what the Prime Minister said. But we go start with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As Mr. Holder said, we have seen it in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that for too long we have focused on North America and Western Europe. The world, all of you know, is much wider than that. And we made a conscious decision to look to the east again, from whence the vast majority of us came. Even those that came from the United Kingdom came from the east. And we've made a conscious effort to venture into Africa because of its population, its vast potential, and its proximity to Barbados. I think many of you would not be aware that if it was possible, when you had a daily flight from Dakar in West Africa, from Senegal, it's a straight line to Barbados. Prime Minister, I'm immortal. Prime Minister, perhaps I should stop now. But I'm saying, from Dakar to Barbados, there was a direct flight, 5.5 hours, the same time it takes to get from Barbados to New York. Currently, to get to any country in Africa, we had a flight to North America and then to Africa, or to UK to Africa. We fly 8 hours and then 8 hours to do that. And we are saying that this is wrong. There's too much potential in Africa for us. There's a need for us to increase and that linkage between us and Africa in terms of trade, in terms of direct investment, in terms of economic possibilities. And so we have established a mission in Accra, in West Africa, in Nairobi, and we are looking at establishing a consular office in North Africa. Recently, many of you would have read that there was a conference in Barbados, the African Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum, the inaugural one, the first time. I believe over 1,000 African business people, investors, etc., were registered for that conference. It was held in Barbados. It went beyond all expectations. And PM, I know that in Barbados, we were not expecting the turnout and the registration that occurred for that conference. It showed an interest in the Caribbean, Barbados and the Caribbean. And coming out of that, apart from the investments in the region, came a solid determination that both Caribbean and Africa would work urgently to start direct air links between the African continent and the Caribbean. And this is something that we have been pushing for. Mr. Ola mentioned our links with Panama and our Panamanian Barbadians. Welcome again. This was one that we thought that was essential, bringing us, because we see Barbados, because of a geographical location, the most easterly of the Caribbean chain, we see ourselves as a sort of focal point, Africa, Central America, that we could become that hub potentially in trade and economic relations. And so we established in Panama with accreditation to Costa Rica, to Nicaragua, to El Salvador, to Guatemala, and indeed to Colombia from there. And that mission has started. It started slowly because, again, of the pandemic, but it is something that we're looking at. In Brazil, we have a mission in Brasilia, and we have an ambassador who is extremely energetic. She speaks about 4 or 5 languages fluently, and she has been accredited thus far to Chile, to Argentina, to Peru, Uruguay. So we are moving in that direction, recognizing that we maintain the relations we have with North America, Canada, the Western Europe, but we need to move into other areas and explore opportunities for Barbadians. So those are the things that we are looking at. It doesn't end there. Earlier this year, we also opened a mission in Abu Dhabi, recognizing the importance of the Middle East, and with expectation to have that ambassador accredited to countries in that region. We participated in the Expo in Dubai, and we have plans now to establish a consular office in Dubai, recognizing the importance of having a presence in that region. So that is how we are moving as it relates to foreign affairs. Of course, we're looking at other missions in the not too distant future, but of course, with the economic issues I mentioned earlier, we have to tread carefully and slowly. Coming out of all of this, we've also eased visa waivers. We've done visa waivers for a number of countries, over 80 countries over the last, well, we started before COVID, and we certainly continue this year, where countries, we boast of being a tourist country. And the United Nations speaks of 193 countries, and I believe we required visas from practically over probably 100 people. We are a tourist destination, and to come to Barbados for a 2-week holiday, we required a visa. We have implemented waiver restrictions. We have introduced visa waivers for a number of countries, as I said, almost 100 countries over the last 3 years, to encourage not a visa to stay forever, but certainly a 3-month period, and thereafter, you do what you have to do. So those are the things that we are looking at. I mentioned air transport. We are looking now at trade and banking opportunities. The Prime Minister was here last week in Washington before the Congressional Committee, looking at de-risking and the issues we have with correspondent banking, utilizing North American banks. And there's some extremely good African banks. So these are opportunities that we are exploring. We are also looking at commercial and cultural opportunities. Africa, in terms of the Nigerians, as it relates to the film industry, we're doing very well, the music, and we have our own famous stars. I'm not going to call names this evening. But this is another area we were looking at as it relates to cultural opportunities. And the Ghanaians, we have recruited Ghanaian nurses to assist us in the health sector. And we're now looking further afield at opportunities with Rwanda and Senegal as two other countries that we can perhaps do a lot of business with. I will go briefly into healthcare for some obvious reasons, because I know that a number of you will have concerns. As it relates to COVID, I spoke to that already. But what that as problems affected globally has been the apparent neglect of the chronic non-communicable diseases, because hospitals globally were affected in terms of accommodation and focusing on COVID. And we now in Barbados still have to recognize that we have the scourge of diabetes, and we need to get that under control now that COVID seems to be receding. And the government has embarked on a project to utilize a cadre of nurses within the health system to be community care nurses. Some of you may be familiar with this decades ago. Some of you who were there decades ago, but that has eased off a bit, and it's something that we are now trying to push to the front burner, recognizing the important role that community health nurses can play in going into the communities, identifying persons who suffer diabetes and hypertension, persons who attend the hospital clinics and who might be defaulting from the system, to try to get them back into the system and ensuring that they're taking their medication. That is from the hospital setting. At the polyclinic level, we're looking now to utilize some of those persons who were recruited during COVID to do contact tracing, etc. They're not necessarily nurses, but they can monitor, they can speak to people, and try to identify persons in the communities and see if you can get them to come to the clinic. And we are also looking at an ambitious project, recognizing the importance of the HbA1c, which is the most accurate test as it is right now, in determining whether or not a person might be pre-diabetic or diabetic or have potential, how we can implement that system throughout Barbados in an effort to control the rising numbers of those afflicted by the chronic diseases. Some of you would have heard about the operating theater waiting lists. And this has happened, as I said, globally. Again, the issues with COVID, overcrowding, etc. This is a matter that we are trying to address. Specifically in Barbados, there are two annoying issues, that of joint replacement surgery and cataract surgery. And we've been working with the QEH assiduously. There's a plan afoot. They've recruited 2 new orthopedic surgeons, and they're now acquiring the prostheses that are necessary for joint replacement, both hip and knee replacement, to continue and to deal with the backlog which has occurred over the past 3 to 5 years. Even before COVID, we were faced with that. And of course, similarly for cataracts, there's been a waiting list that years ago we utilized the Cuban Operación Milagro to assist, but now we find ourselves back to that situation again where we have, I believe the last time I heard it was about 700 persons on a waiting list waiting for cataract surgery. We've had meetings recently, and there's a commitment by the ophthalmologist surgeons that they will reduce this number. They're looking at doing 95 to 100 cataract cases per month. So I'm keeping both fingers crossed. But it is something that we are addressing, and I know that many of you follow what happens in Barbados and will be rather concerned as to what is happening there. In spite of the new construction of a new accident emergency department, we still faced with problems again during COVID with overcrowding. But this continues not necessarily because of COVID, but because of a number of problems. There's still a problem in Barbados of persons, and I don't know how delicately I can put it, where their elderly relatives bring them to hospital, and when they're recovered, not saying that they're unable to look after them. It's called elderly for care. That is the medical diagnosis. They've been treated, they're fit to be discharged, but they become elderly for care. and this has been a rising problem. And obviously, if they're elderly for care and we don't have space for them in a geriatric facility, they occupy beds in our tertiary institution. And this obviously will affect bed availability in the institution. We also have people who also abandon their relatives in the accident emergency department. We have, which we established several years ago, an alternative care, the elderly program, where government paid private sector providers to accommodate some of these persons in care of the elderly homes. We are looking at expanding this, but more importantly, the Prime Minister has come up, and we are working on this now, to construct a new modern geriatric facility to accommodate these people, recognizing that these are the builders of Barbados, and in their later years, they should have company accommodation. As it relates to our polyclinics, we had embarked on a system of moving polyclinics to 24-hour care and to upgrading them, again with an aim to ease the strain on the hospital. This went into abeyance during COVID, and it is also something that we will be looking at in the near future to start that again. We started with St. John, and we started with the Sir Winston Scott Polyclinic, where they were open 24 hours providing services 7 days a week. But this was reduced during COVID. So those are some of the things that we've been working on as it relates to the healthcare. In environment, the sewage that you heard about a couple of years ago is not there, but we've not ended that project. We're still looking at a new project as it relates to the South Coast Sewage Treatment Plant, where we figure the solution has to be a tertiary treatment facility, and we are working behind the scenes to do that. We are looking at the whole issue of water quality in Barbados and water distribution. And some of you would have been following the news and would have seen, you would have heard of the water shortages and outages. But I'm sure, I don't know if you've heard about the new facilities and the new reservoirs that we have put in place. And that a number of, in most of these areas, the water outages does not exist. Not completely gone, but we have been addressing it. As it relates to collection of garbage, again, this was a complaint in the past. We have acquired new garbage trucks since we've come to office, and now you would have heard from some of your relatives, and you would have seen photos of them. You have receptacles that not only you put your garbage in, but it's also being, because over the years we've had so many issues with persons who work in sanitation having back injuries, and we thought that we need not only to look after the sanitary and the garbage, but also to look after the health of those persons who have to work disposing the garbage. So these are some of the things that we are looking at in Barbados. I don't need to tell you about the electric buses. I know that a number of you have had the opportunity to come to Barbados and to enjoy the beauty of Barbados from electric buses. Some of you would have been complaining about potholes. I believe 2 years ago, a lady in the audience complained about the potholes in Barbados, and we held our heads down. But now I can tell you, if you come to Barbados, you will see roadworks occurring practically all over the island, and a massive one has just started in the Scotland district. Colleagues, friends, colleagues and friends, the Prime Minister is here. She's a very busy person, extremely hardworking, very busy. I don't want to bore her. And I don't want to bore her. I don't want her to get tired sitting down. So I'm going to end here. Certainly I'm available to answer any of your questions that you have. And it was again my pleasure. I hope that this time I bring you good news and I will not be the harbinger of evil events. Thank you.
Prime Minister is coming. Let me just take a moment to acknowledge our honorary counsel, Timothy Downs. I just saw him walking. Former Consul General Jessica Older Baril is somewhere. Acknowledge her, please. Lamona World is from the mayor's office, a Barbadian doing some good stuff. We have the vice consul from Jamaica as well. And I would like just for a minute to introduce you to the staff at both, at the consulate, including BTMI, and also the mission. If you could just stand and be acknowledged for all your hard work. The man on the camera there is Kervin Devonish, who is better known as Spike Lee's cinematographer, a Barbadian doing great things as well. And of course, at the head table is our ambassador to the USA, Mr. Noel, Ambassador Noel Lynch. Well, what is there to say about Prime Minister Motley that has not been said already? In the last couple of years, she's really been the leader for the developing world on all matters, outstandingly so. You've seen her at General Assembly. You've seen her at COT. You've heard her on climate change, resilience funding, disaster clauses, all sorts of things. You might not know that she's full steam ahead, securing food security in light of the pandemic, but even outside that. And when I say full steam ahead, full steam ahead. There have been projects with, especially Guyana, that are moving ahead in Barbados. And this is a new thing in the Caribbean, led by our Prime Minister. Because, you know, sometimes we talk, but the action is not there. But in short time, if you drive through St. George by any chance, you will see the work started. Of course, she's taken Barbados to being a republic. Interesting times. Well, you know how these things go. Protocol, let me pause and bring to you for a few minutes our Ambassador Noel Lynch.
Good evening to you all. If you're familiar with cricket, you know, the famed Australian great Sir Donald Bradman went to play in a cricket match, and a man supposedly got him out in the first over, LBW, and the umpire did not give him out. He said because the people didn't come here to see you bowl, they came here to see Bradman bat. So I'm very familiar that you won't come here to see me. You came here to see the Prime Minister of Barbados. So I just want to say good evening. Thank you very much for having us here. I also want to encourage all of you who are here. We have a database that is managed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in which we register Barbadians. We register their names, their addresses, their educational background, their skills, and as the Prime Minister said, their interests. I know many people are not sometimes very eager to get their names in any type of database. We in the IRS are not so. We want to know, the Prime Minister has railed on us, if Barbados is going to go to its next level of development, it can't do so with only the people that are gathered on that 166 square miles. We need more people, we need more skills, and we need to start first with those who have Barbados in their heads and in their hearts, and that's the diaspora. So I encourage you this evening to join the database. You can register through the consulate here. But we have a burgeoning database managed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we have a register here in the United States which now has over 5,000 people in it. So with those words, thank you very much for having us. It's great to be in New York again. And I know you didn't come to see me, but the Prime Minister. Good evening and thank you.
I'm going to bring the Prime Minister now. But there are two ladies at the top, two of our permanent secretaries, the most Honorable Alice Jordan and Miss Simone Rather. And without them, Barbados will not be doing what it does. Give them a hand, please, there. As they always are, in the background, working hard. I was in mid-stride, but you know, Mr. Lynch will sprinter. Let me bring the Prime Minister. I was about to get to the climax, which was achieve two unprecedented political victories back-to-back, 30 love. Prime Minister of Barbados, Honorable Mia Amor Motley. Thank you. Thank you.
You have to forgive me if I start the evening by saying it's good to be back. And I say so because I feel as though the last 2 years have been like 20. Those of you who know that religiously, since 2008, I made it a habit of coming and engaging in this city with Bajans. And therefore, the last 2 years, 2.5 years of COVID, and the closest we came was an engagement with the nurses and the medical fraternity within our diasporic population. But let's give ourselves a big round of applause. We are back. That don't sound like a big round of applause to me. That sounds like you're lukewarm. I'm not sure if you came to watch Bradman bat, but I'm no Bradman. I'm a West Indian batsman and know how to bat with flair. So I want the energy and temperature here to get hot. No, quite honestly, colleagues and friends, look, it really is good to be here. And believe you me, I've been going since 8:30 this morning, literally without a break. But I insisted that I would not know how to be in New York City this week without having a chance to hear and to listen to Bajans. And the truth is that we have committed as a government to trying to keep everyone as informed as possible, to be open as possible. Indeed, since the last election, we introduced another part of our democracy, or we strengthened another part of our democracy by ensuring that we have every month both rubbing shoulders and the parish speaks. And thus far, we've had St. Joseph speaks, we've had St. John speaks, we've had St. George speaks, we've had St. Philip speaks, we've had St. Andrew speaks, and this month we're about to go in to Christchurch. No, this is St. James speaks next week when I go home. It's St. James speaks. October, Christchurch speaks. And all them enough people in St. Michael will speak in November. But the importance of that is the reason why I'm also here. And I've taken an approach and a decision that you hear me speak so often, that what is important is for me to hear you and for me to be able to answer your concerns and to be able to see how you can help improve what we are doing and how we can also bridge the gap of your knowledge with what we are doing. Times continue to be difficult globally, as you know here. You know what it was when the gas prices went up in this country, didn't you? It wasn't only Barbados that it went up. You know what it is like when, and we see it. I went in Best Buy last night late and half the shelves were empty. We know what it is like when the disruption of a supply chain happens. Nobody ever thought that the big United States of America would run out of baby food. But we live in a different world. And what is sad is that I reflected on my first visit up here in 2018, and I said to you then, as I did to the rest of the world, that regrettably the world was looking too much like it did 100 years ago. I didn't know then that we would have the 21st century Spanish flu. I didn't know then that we would have a war in Europe again. I didn't know then that we would see inflation rise and spiral in the way in which it has, or that we would see over 40 countries on the verge of a debt crisis, as we are seeing. And we need the world to save them and to stop it, because anytime a debt crisis morphs into a financial crisis, then the pockets of individuals will start to suffer. That is why Franklin Delano Roosevelt is recognized as one of the best presidents in this country's history, because of the work that he did to be able to stabilize people's savings and the functioning of banks. We didn't know then that all of these things would conspire to make the world a very uncertain world. But it has happened. The difference is that you have a lot more and a better stance from which to play the ball than your grandparents or your great-grandparents did 100 years ago. And while we are conscious, therefore, of that reality, we have to be thankful for the investments made in us to put us in a better position to be resilient than those who were there 100 years ago. I have every confidence that we are small enough and nimble enough to create that pathway to let us keep going up and up. But I also am conscious that it does require some serious discipline and effort on the part of us all. And to say otherwise and to promise otherwise would be to fool myself and yourselves in a way that would not be kosher. So my friends, I have come here this evening to listen. I'm going to take my chair and I'm going to speak from the mic there, and I'm going to invite you to come and ask questions. Those who know me know that I will give the same speeches in the answering of the questions, but it will be guided by the areas of interest that you want to talk about, rather than me determining the topic of conversation this evening. And I'm doing that because I can't assume to read your mind on what you're concerned about after a 2-year hiatus. And I want, therefore, to listen to you, engage with you. And before the end, I'm going to urge you all again to be able, as Noel said, to register and to work with us, because we believe our domestic population is not just those living on 166 square miles, but it involves everyone who is Bajan by birth, by descent, by marriage, and above all else, by choice. So let us get on with the conversation. Who laughing at choice? Thank you.
So who's up first?
Good evening, Prime Minister Riley, and Senator Welcome, and Ambassador Noel, and all the esteemed guests, as well as my compadres. My name is Sandra T. Eady. I was born in Barbados. When I was 12, they sent me away to come to my parents, who I didn't know because I was raised by my grandparents. I am diaspora. And when I look around this room, I see, well, let me ask the question, right? How many people here are first-generation immigrants to the United States? Like you came out of Barbados? Raise your hand, please.
You're asking how many people live in Springberry and Barbados?
No. It's a different question. It's a different question. How many people actually left Barbados and came here? First-generation immigrants. Yes, right? How many of you have American-born children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren? Raise your hand, please. And this is really important, right? Because we are diaspora. The US Census says that our median age is 53. And when I look around this room, I don't see a lot of our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And so my question then becomes, you know, how do we sustain ourselves as diaspora? Now, I have 2 children that were born here. And I have heard the question from Barbadian government people asking us where are our children. And it's a really good question, right? So my children submitted the response to that, okay? And I wanted to share that because I think it's really important that when we talk, it's not always transactional, that you all know who we really are. And we, as first-generation immigrants, many of us have suffered trauma. Many of us came to parents we didn't know. Many of us came to a system we didn't know and had to learn the hard way how to survive here. Like, we are not just, you know, people who send home barrels. We have stories, right? We have stories, and it's nice to be asked, hey, what is your story? And not just that we are here to support Barbados, but that Barbados wants to know. And excuse me, I'm getting there. So my children, I asked them, I said, well, how come you guys don't participate? How can we get you to invest in Barbados? At least go to Barbados. The bottom line, they said, Barbados is too expensive. Being 22 and 30 in the United States right now is very hard. They have rent, car payments, student loans, and their friends go to Tulum, Cancun, and DR, and they just cannot afford Barbados right now. And I need to hear how we might address that, because I would really like them to come to Barbados because I love Barbados, right? They also said, y'all have a question for me? Okay, would you like me to wrap up, Prime Minister Motley? Because I did ask a question. Can you answer my question? The question has to do, yeah, the question has to do with, are you concerned, how are we sustainable if our children and grandchildren are not, as Sandra husband said, that they're not contributing?
I think that we have to have a clear appreciation as to what the issues are. Look, most people who come up here work hard to be able to keep things together, and then they have to deal with their children. I think we've never set about to be able to put in our children's hearts the way and the linkages as Jewish people have done. Jewish people walk with their God, and Jewish people walk with their culture. I think we have the ability to do it, and I think that now that technology has made it easier for us to identify and to relate as a diasporic community, that we can perhaps see more of it. But there's no doubt that we've lost the battle with numbers of generations. Bajans were coming here from the early 20th century. Bajans were some of them were at the center of the Harlem Renaissance. Some of them were at the center of all kinds of things. Eric Cole is a Bajan. Yes. Attorney General of the United States of America under Obama. We can find and have Shirley Chisholm was a Bajan. And this country is very good. And in 2024, we celebrate the centenary of her birth. We have now to go about in a structured way, reinforcing what our heritage is and how our people can become involved. And I go further. Our government is going to have to pass an immigration bill into law soon. And why? Barbados has the horrific statistic ahead of us that 1 in every 2 Barbadians by the year 2050 will be over the age of 65. You cannot build out this society if that is the demographic. Angela Merkel and others in Europe discovered that the hard way as well. You have, regrettably, in developed countries, a declining population that is an aging population. And while Barbados has not fully made it to development status, we have the same attributes of a developing country. But it isn't just Barbados. They expect that, ECLA expects that Jamaica and Trinidad will have 39% of their population over the age of 65 by 2050. Canada, to the north of this country, has recognized for decades that they had to build out their population if they were going to fuel economic growth. And you perhaps will better ask the question, why has the Caribbean performed less than the average in the Americas and the average globally since the late 1980s? We believe that a lot of it has to do with also the lack of the numbers of people coming to work every day to produce and to provide scale. Where does that leave us? Your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren, we would want to be able to have Barbadian citizenship as of right, not just your children. But that is a conversation we're going to have with you, as I'm doing now, and with Barbadians at home, because most of you still have family home, and people at home have family all over the world. And the reality is that we need Bajans to come back home to build out the country and to allow us to be able to sustain economic prosperity. In addition to that, there are skills that you have, and those skills will make a huge difference. And then there's some of you who may not want to do it 12 months a year, but you may want to be able, with the advantages of technology now, to decide that you're going to spend some of the time here and some of the time there, and you can deliver the skill sets or sell the goods that you need to both places that you've committed to in a way that is credible. So I hope that that opportunity for us to bind with you and your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will create a bridge that will allow us to leverage more the heritage that we have, but more importantly, the future that we want to build. And if we can have you coming to work, whether here or there, and promoting Barbados and Barbadian interests and Barbadian goods and Barbadian services and Barbadian tourism every day, then we will go from strength to strength to strength. So I hope that answers your question, Dan.
To the Honorable Prime Minister, I am Mayor Adrian Mapp from the city of Plainfield, New Jersey. First, I want to commend you for moving Barbados from a constitutional monarchy to a republic and for the leadership that you're providing on the world stage. Recently, we had the death of the Queen after 60 years on the throne, 70 years on the throne. And we have in Barbados the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, which could use a lot of help. And I'm wondering, what is your position on reparations, and should there be a demand from Barbados and the other islands in the Caribbean, to Britain in particular, given all that they have done over the years doing slavery up until this very day? And so Hilary Beckles talks about Drax Hall Plantation and a member of Parliament, Sir Drax, who still sits in the British Parliament. And I'm wondering, what should we do in terms of reparation, number one? And number two, In terms of the legalization of cannabis, where do you stand on that as far as Barbados is concerned?
Now you see why I sat down tonight. It's not only Mr. Mark's comments, but I look and see how many people standing up. And I read this wicked right this evening. With respect to reparations, look, Barbados chairs the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on Reparations, and in fact, it's been a work in progress. We would have hoped to have been a little more aggressive again with the issue in Europe at the beginning of this year, but of course war came. And therefore you have to work out, and once you read the wicket right, you know what shots to play. And with this one, all we're doing is doubling down and preparing better. In fact, the last conversation, Ambassador will tell you, literally 2 minutes before I came into this auditorium, was with partners that we're working with in Europe in order to be able to see how we can tackle it from 2 and 3 ends. So Hillary leads the effort because, and many people in here may not know my own location in this debate, but I led the effort on behalf of Barbados more than 20 years ago, and in the PrepCom, the preparatory committees for the World Conference Against Racism leading to Durban, and therefore was very much at the center of the discussion both in Chile and in Geneva. And at the very time that the Germans were agreeing to settle with the Jewish people, we were in Geneva trying to make the case for reparations. The reality is that for us, reparations is fundamentally a development issue. And it is the robbing of the development opportunities from us, as well as the dehumanizing impact that it placed on our people that continues to concern us. King Charles III in Rwanda, and I didn't get to go to Rwanda because I had COVID, but the foreign minister and the permanent secretaries were there, and they would have heard King Charles deliver himself of the words in Rwanda, following up on what he had said in Barbados on the occasion of the Republic last November, that slavery is a most heinous and horrid institution, and that the regret for it definitely was there. But more importantly, as he reflected on the conversations taking place in Canada with the indigenous Indians, and you all saw Pope Francis meet with them at the end of July, that this is a conversation whose time has come. Now he said that not as King Charles III. It is true, he said it as Prince Charles. But he also, in one of his last public acts before acceding to the throne, accepted the invitation by the Voice newspaper. And any of you who know London would know that the Voice newspaper in London is a premier black newspaper, and it was in fact celebrating its 40th anniversary. And he accepted the high honor of being its editor in the 40th anniversary publication. And he invited me to write and to answer questions in that publication. It hasn't been circulated widely yet on this side of the Atlantic. But I want to say to you that I can't, and I want to be very clear, King Charles now is not part of the executive in the traditional way that I am or Prime Minister Truss is. But suffice it to say that when I call for global moral strategic leadership, it is because I believe that leadership comes not only by those who have the power to make decisions in government at the executive level, but it is also the tone that you set and the comments that you make and the kind of things that we believe to be acceptable or worthy of conversation or worthy of resolution. I am satisfied that for us, the issue of reparations is a live issue, both in the United States of America, and I don't know why you keep turning only to Europe, because the United States of America in and of itself also was responsible for things that would cause a reparatory conversation to take place. And we have seen it in terms of the endowments that have gone to a number of universities here that would have come out of slaves. We've seen it also in terms of the extraction of wealth that led to the financing of the Industrial Revolution. And if we understand the impact of the Industrial Revolution on greenhouse gases and climate crisis, it is in fact greater than those who are currently emitted, because the stock is what has been led to the largest contributor to the climate crisis that we face today. And you would have heard me say over and over that we're paying double jeopardy. That it was our blood, sweat, and tears that financed the Industrial Revolution, and it is now the Industrial Revolution that is putting us on the front line of the climate crisis. So these discussions are alive. Many of you would have read for the first time what was said in the New York Times about Haiti and the payments to the French Treasury even after its declaration of independence. But guess what? Hillary and I were talking about that for over 20 years. Hillary and I were talking about that for over 20 years. And it is only now gaining currency. And it is gaining currency largely because of the George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter that literally went viral and global once people realized that institutional racism is alive and well. And we heard comments for the first time about unconscious bias. But how many speeches have we given about the fact that we may have removed the legal vestiges of slavery, but regrettably, it is the mental emancipation that is needed. It is the people who look, and I ain't talking about white people now, let me stop. I'm talking about our own people. I'm talking about people looking at children and saying, don't stand outside too long because you can get too dark. I'm talking about people who tell people, look, try and marry somebody who can help you lighten this here. All of you in here know exactly what I'm talking about. And that, regrettably, is what has been embedded in us. So even though we remove the laws that lead to active discrimination, we have not yet fully succeeded in cleaning and cleansing our minds from that unconscious bias that helps us to make judgments about our own. We look at somebody and say, well, where he going looking so? Yes. Or he can't even talk proper English. Well, guess what? When I go in the IMF, 80% of the people can't talk proper English too. And you know, I will say some of these things. We have Bajans who have excelled. And when they tell them they can't talk proper English, the man says, well, I didn't set out to be the best English speaker. They set out to excel in the discipline that they had. Now, that does not mean that you don't encourage people to communicate in as many ways as they can, because dialect is one way, formal English is another way, Spanish is another way, Portuguese is another way. There are different ways. Sign language is another way. And the more ways we can communicate, the wider the audience, the more effective the message. But the process of concluding the debate on reparatory justice and asking for reparations will not happen in one fell swoop, but it is going to happen over a period of time. The University of Glasgow has already entered into arrangements with the University of the West Indies to make recompense for what they believe was their role in slavery. There are other institutions that we will be approaching, and the truth is that in the United Kingdom, Christopher Codrington, all of us know Codrington College, Christopher Codrington had, his society was called the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel. Set up the school that Jerome and all them lodge boys went to. But it was, and him too, sorry. But the problem is that it also exploited the labor of our ancestors. And it also extracted wealth from our ancestors. And it took it up to Oxford and helped form All Souls College, and we can go on with all of the other institutions and all of the enough property that they own in central London as the Society for the Propagation of Gospel. And we have to systematically map now and to carry out the argument. And the reason why I was having the conversation is that we are partnering with other entities who also legitimately believe in the reparatory campaign and who will help us structure it out with the work that Sir Hilary and others have done and with the work that we must now further populate it with. The Church of England is also awaiting, and ironically the Commissioner for the Church of England in England is a Bajan, Alan Smith from HSBC Bank, who's in charge of risk there. And we anxiously await that report from the Church of England looking at its own forensic report about its own property, etc. Ironically, I forget Sunita's last name, one of our Barbadians is also a principal of a college that would have tried to remove some of the artifacts, and the court of the church said they were legitimately there. And obviously that kind of tension and battle is now taking place in the UK. So that this issue is very much a work in progress, but it is not going to happen overnight. And sorry for the long response, but there's no short way of nuancing and giving you the details of it. It is very much a work in progress for Barbados as a state, but also for Barbados leading on behalf of the Caribbean with the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on Reparations as we are doing. And therefore, our interest is not just the United Kingdom, but even Denmark had slaves. Most people know about France and Spain and Belgium and Portugal, but even Denmark had slaves at one time. And this country, as I said, can't really run from the imperialistic behavior either. With respect to cannabis, I support it. And I support it not just in Barbados, I support it globally. Look, the CARICOM Commission on Cannabis produced a report back in 2018 it was, and it made it absolutely clear that cannabis only became illegal in our countries in the last 100 years, and that it was actually legal. The reality is, if there's a country that knows what criminalization does to boost criminal opportunity, it's this country with alcohol. And you know what happened with bootlegging here and everything. Now, we felt that we would, on the last occasion, we introduced legislation for medicinal cannabis, and that authority is up and running. There are issues with banking and correspondent banking, which is part of the reason we gave evidence before Congress last Wednesday. And it's not just on cannabis, it's for people who trade in gold, it's for people who have slot machines, it's for a whole host of other things. In our case, it is the debanking of people. In cases like Belize and other countries, it's actually the loss of correspondent banking for the whole bank. But because we have 3 Canadian banks and 2 Trinidadian banks who have changed their rules and literally made it more difficult for us to get bank accounts and our children to get bank accounts and our businesses to get bank accounts, they've managed to maintain most of their correspondent banking, but they've also been debanking classes of people. And in this country, they seem to have settled on what they believe is a perfect recipe, which is legalize marijuana at the state level, but keep it illegal at the federal level, so you can't bring about the trade in it, and you can't use the money across borders with it. And that is the perfect form of protectionism at the state level, in a way that if you had it at the federal level, you would have far more competition. We have too many of our young people carrying criminal convictions before, and a lot of it has gone now. The last piece of legislation we passed when we moved the possession of cannabis to a ticketable offense, where if you are caught with it, you pay $200 on the spot, and that immediately led to the expungement of a number of people's records, even if they haven't gone forward in all the numbers to do it. We believe, and in the first election, we put it in that we would go to a referendum. Deliberately in this election, I said we were not putting it to a referendum, and at the appropriate time, the government will, in addition to the medicinal cannabis, in addition to the sacramental cannabis, in addition to these issues, we're going to have a conversation with Barbadians to be able to see whether we should not decriminalize. But at a personal level, Mayor Motley, not the cabinet, not the government, I support it. But then so did most of the other political leaders, all came out and supported it. And therefore you ask yourself, why do we continue to perpetuate this nonsense? And why do we continue to do so in a way that was intended really to serve another country's purpose and cause?
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. My name is Neil Jones, and I'm only going to mention it because your minister mentioned it. I'm the chairman of Cormier Alumni USA. Cormier Alumni USA. You made a good segue just now to what I want to ask you about, and that I listened to your presentation to the Committee of Banking in Washington, and I really agree with you. But my thing is about banking. On Tuesday, we wanted to send some money to Cormier, $5,000. I was able to go to the bank and send it right there, and it got there. And I didn't like the fees, but that's okay. But $50 was too much for me. But the thing is that I am from Grizex. Since 2018, I've been trying to get an account open for these people to send some money back here. And you go to the bank and I look at the papers and they talk about money laundering and all that nonsense. My question to you, and I got one more, but my question to you, can you do something to say, okay, I'm going to make the level $3,000 or $4,000, and these little organizations, they're going to deal with this money laundering nonsense. Can you do that? But I want.
The irony is that it is at 5,000 US, and it has been at 5,000 US from the time we introduced the legislation in the 1990s. And that's one of the points I made to Congresswoman Waters on Wednesday, and the ranking member, that we actually are far more rigorous, because up here it is $10,000. Okay. But part and parcel of this is about, in my view, is anti-competitive behavior. You can go and open a bank account here with virtually no problems.
Right.
You can do it in Canada with virtually no problems. But what you have foisted on Caribbean people now makes it almost impossible for us to assume that our children and our businesses and people who want to come and do business with us can get it. And that's why we're fighting these battles. And that's why I'm up here. I mean, I would much rather have been home. That's the truth.
So what you're telling me that, wait, one question. What you're telling me that if I go to Barbados now, and I can go into a bank with 5,000 US, a group, not an individual.
The trigger for money laundering should be 5,000 US or more. So if they're giving you stress for the equivalent of 10,000 Barbados, then we need to ask them why. And you can give us the information and we will follow up with those particular banks. But I am aware that, like with most other things, we feel that we have to go the other direction. We feel that we have to be bigger and badder and better than anybody else. So that if you're getting that stress for under $10,000, let us investigate it for you.
Okay, but I've got one more quick one for you. Like, I remember in 2016, the police association came to me and said, we got these things here that would do something if a person got shot in Barbados. And I don't know if I should call the name. One of your companies in Barbados are charging $10,000. And they said that we can get them at $1,000. I made a deal here to get them at $1,000. There's a machine that would stop bleeding and all that. And then the salesman called me offline, called me at home at night and told me, we can't sell to you. We can't sell to Barbados because that company, and they got AS in it, has the contract with them. So they can't sell. I can believe it. So I went down to Barbados sometime and I met with the CEO at the hospital at the time. And he told me, yes, we can't buy from you. And added to that, but the thing is, added to that is that we got MRI machines and CAT machines, and we have to wait to Trinidad and all kind of things to come to repair them. I got a classic example now in the chemistry labs at Commerce. There's something called a hood. This is like if you turn on your thing, it's out the air. These things are broken. And I hear when people talk about let the government do it. So I said, okay, we're going to do it here. We can get a quote. And I got a quote from a university in Trinidad, $13,000, because there's nobody in Barbados that could fix it. This is not right. We have to, and I'm going out to Barbados next month. I'm going to tell Cormier, we got to start training our kids to do these things, repair machines, and stop being lawyers and all kind of crap and economists. I mean, it's really true.
I agree with you that there got too many lawyers. But all jokes aside, that may be in that particular instance. Barbados actually has a trade surplus with the OECS. And the trade surplus is driven not so much only by goods, it's driven by services. And every day, what you used to see, I mean, they now are the ones having the greatest hell in travel, but the amount of technicians that go into the Eastern Caribbean to fix equipment for banks, for hospitals, for all kinds of things is very much there in Barbados.
You know,
so
that guy has to come from Trinidad
no, I know, but
to fix bicycle.
right, but let me make the point. That may be one of the unusual instances, because what the point I'm making is that a lot of Barbadians are actually fixing equipment and plant all through the OECS and Barbados. I can't tell, even locksmiths, all the bank vaults, all of those things are done by Bajans. So I'm not pools, servicing, all of those things. So I don't tell you that we can do everything, and I certainly want to see us expand the areas in which we provide training, but don't believe that it is the standard in Barbados. We do have a lot of people who have been trained in areas of vocational training and equipment, and we just need to continue to build on it.
I would like to find one when I go down there, because they tell me they can't find that. They got to go to the university to bring up a guy, and he gave me a...
All right, I think we hear you, but I think you need to hear me too, that this is the one instance in this particular instance for sure. And if you give us the information, I give you the commitment that we're going to make sure we find the SJPI to start training in that area. Most people don't even know SJPI was able to print all of the 3D printing of all of the masks. And in fact, I saw an ad in the paper recently with SJPI with the 3D printing. So there's a lot more happening at home in vocational training, but it doesn't mean that we're in position to do all. And we will continue to expand. And if you give me the information, I'll make sure. Thank you, sir. And I will check on the associations.
Nurse Ford.
Good evening. Good evening, the Honorable Mayor Moore Mortley. My name is Sonia Ford. Like the first speaker said, I'm an immigrant. One of the people that came from Barbados here, I migrated here in 1984. Like Jerome said, I understand the need to give back. I was one of those nurses that volunteered to go and work in St. Lucie. I am here today. It really burdens my heart, but I feel like I have no choice but to ask you to help me. In 2016, before, I know that when I retire, I want to go back to Barbados. So I've tried on various other occasions to obtain property. I've lost a lot of money. Okay, so when an opportunity arose with the National Housing Corporation, I took the opportunity. I withdrew money from my 401 with penalty, but it didn't matter because the opportunity was there, over $60,000. And I went and I made a deposit from 2016 till now, and all I have is a foundation. And I would like for your interaction. I feel like, I've reached out. I'm from St. Thomas originally, so I have met with Cynthia Ford. And
let me tell you what to do, my dear. I'm not going to treat you any differently than I treat people who come to me in Parish Speaks. Members of my staff are here. My assistant is with me, Ashanta. Meet with Sonia there, correct? And give her the information. And we have a director of citizen engagement that I will give as soon, in fact, it will be emailed to him tonight, and he will investigate every day. Every day we're doing it. I get letters from people every day. But what I don't want is people having to talk out the business globally, and we will deal with it, my dear. So please come.
So
the
this
lady right there in the red scarf, that
Okay.
is her.
And one other thing I want
Thank
to
you.
say, in reference to your kindness to the ships during COVID. So I had the
Mike.
sorry, your kindness to the cruise line during COVID. So I actually had the opportunity to work with the Royal Caribbean for 6 months. I was on their ship Grandeur de Seas that was out of Barbados. And I want you to know that all they talk about on the ship is you and your kindness, okay? And I want also the Barbadian people to know that, you know, being like the ship Grandeur de Seas, the home port is Barbados. And I looked it up from the 70s. Bahamas, all the ships that cruise are registered in the Bahamas. Bahamas is not a home port for nobody, but Barbados is, and we have to embrace that. So I went to get some coffee, and I saw this, Pine Hill Dairy Milk that they're serving at their Starbucks there in Latin Trees. And I just
I understand how excited you are, but the rest will hear you do.
Right, I saw the Pine Hill Dairy Milk. I had to take a picture so that I could bring and show everybody, because you know the kindness, getting us the home port is a lot of that brings a lot of investment. Yeah. Because I spoke to a lot of people, the English people, a lot of people from all over the world. They're happy they don't have to go to America to get a visa. They just strictly come to Barbados and they sail. The Caribbean people get to come up. It opened up more job opportunities, and I just want you to know I'm one of those proud Bajans, okay?
Thank you so much. Ashanda's over there. Let me also say to you that the Minister of Tourism, Senator Lisa Cummins, has in fact been meeting with the cruise lines for us to ensure that we can get as many supplies on the boats, the ships that are home porting out of Barbados, not just Pine Hill Dairy, but vegetables, other things that we make.
Actually, I saw them bring cucumbers also.
Exactly. And we are literally trying to increase the uptake. And that is one of the good things that has come back to us. You know what they say, do good unto others, and it shall attend you. Well, the truth is that Barbados is beginning to benefit from the generosity that we expressed as a country when we moved over 20,000 people, when nobody else in the Eastern and Southern Caribbean would take them through their countries during COVID. So thank God for the compassionate spirit. And it is up to us now to exploit the opportunities. In addition, they had job fairs, and a number of Barbadians have been able to get jobs as well from the different lanes. So thank you.
I just want to say one more thing, you know. I'm sorry, from the healthcare perspective. So, you know, the cruise ships, they have the crew. They're like, some of them, they're 2,000 or whatever. So being that Barbados is the home port, that means that when the ship comes in on Sunday, which, you know, Barbados is closed on Sundays, crew members with health issues that need to see a doctor or be referred, that's only one problem I found. We had a difficult time finding practitioners to take care of the crew because it was Sunday and, you know, everybody was home.
Thank you.
But I think that's a money cow right there. If we could do something to improve that.
I think what they'll find, the urgent care centers will be open, but perhaps what we can do is speak to BAMP and ensure that other doctors take advantage of it when they know the home porting season, because it's not all year round, but it tends to be winter. Right. So I'll certainly carry back that message, and I thank you for sharing it with us. Sandra.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Walks-Wallison, and I'm here because I'm a little perplexed, but I'll explain why. I don't know if you recall, but on October 5th of 2018, I had the privilege of sitting with you in your office, where I presented a few projects to you: renewable energy, greenhouse, and the building of a new hospital. And you gave me a directive, which was to do my research, come back and present it to you in hard copy. So I did that. During COVID, I spent 5 months in Barbados, and it allowed me to, of course, well, we couldn't go anywhere, so we watched the news, not only in Barbados, but in the entire world. And one of the objectives that they had was that the world wants to have renewable green energy by the year 2030. I know the economics of Barbados and most of the other Caribbean countries, and we cannot afford it. Again, going back to your directive, I used that 5 months that I was there to research energy companies, which I've now partnered with, and research foundations, humanitarian foundations, that will provide 100% of the financing for renewable energy and greenhouses in Barbados. The greenhouses are not to replace anything that the farmers are growing, but for the items that we now import. You go on the shelves and you buy a bag of salad, $12, it's half rotten, it lasts you a day. We can build that. And the greenhouses work by solar energy, and we could provide with one module alone $1.5 million in revenue. The foundations that I'm working with now has already slated $1 billion to Barbados. I have a proposal for the renewable energy and for the greenhouses. They're also interested in building a new 500-bed hospital in Barbados, a geriatric hospital, a psychiatric hospital, and looking at our water system. All of this money from the foundation, Barbados does not have to pay a penny. It is on boot contracts, build, own, operate, and transfer. It is legal, it is transparent. All we need from the Prime Minister is to say that I am interested. The president of the foundation will come to Barbados. My partner, the president of the solar company, will come to Barbados. The president of Cornucopia Farms, which is the greenhouse farms, will come to Barbados. I myself will come and sit with you. We presented to CG Holder. He was excited about it. We presented to Minister Weir, Minister Simmons. After a while, I kind of came to a brick wall. I'm not quite sure.
I suspect, I don't want to talk business out, but I suspect that y'all were asking for guarantees of some type. And with the boot, if you want to build greenhouses, you don't need the permission of government to do that. And you can go ahead and do that and use the opportunity to exploit the imports that you want. With respect to a hospital as well, we have obviously a limited population in Barbados. But if you wanted to build a hospital that you were bringing people in, that you can do without government as well. We will facilitate with the same concessions that we give everybody else. But if my memory serves me correctly, I suspect that some of this may require government guarantees, and we don't have the fiscal space for those kinds of government guarantees. But we can facilitate the investment for you on your own.
But with the with the foundation, not all of the foundations work on boot contracts, number one. So yes, you're right, but not all of them work with boot contracts. Basically what they need to know, because it's such a large sum of money, that government is aware that the money is coming in and that it's channeled through the central bank.
That is a matter. Central bank is an independent legal entity in Barbados. And on those matters, central bank will give you answers, yes or no. My concern is, look, people come to us every month and tell us about foundations with hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. And my thing is, if it is real, come into Barbados, register, deal with the central bank, deal with the entities, and we will work with you. Now, if there's a credible case that we can work with, and as I said, part of the difficulty of being in an IMF program is that we have limited fiscal space. And may I remind us that when we inherited the government, we inherited a government whose debt was in excess of $16 billion. We had a debt to GDP ratio of 177% when we took into account what the last government owed in arrears. And it therefore meant that Barbados was the third most indebted country in the world when it came to per capita debt to GDP. We brought that down, this government, to 116%. Our last date for restructuring on the external debt was December 2019. What happened in January 2020? COVID. We went back up to, I think, about 146%, and we're back down now to about 125%. And we are working to keep it carrying down further and further. What does that mean? It means that we have to be very selective about what we borrow for in terms of building capacity. And I don't say so.
But this is not a loan.
Yes, but a guarantee sits on our balance sheet in the same way. And that is the difficulty. And a boot, for accounting standards, and a bolt, and a bot, however which one, build, operate, transfer, build, own, operate, transfer, build, own, lease, transfer, all of those are considered as liabilities on the government's balance sheet. That's why we can't go into them.
Right, okay.
But as it relates now to the renewable energy, I think that the FTC, the Fair Trading Commission, has cleared the way. It has taken us long. You would have heard me in May of this year when the IMF director was there, complain about the length of time that the Fair Trading Commission was taking to settle the regulatory issues pertaining to renewable energy. It is one of my greatest regrets that we have taken so long. But we are at that stage now where most of the hurdles have been removed, and you will see a number of larger renewable energy projects moving off with dispatch. So long as you're not relying on government, you're free to go and access.
Okay, so
but that is a licensing arrangement. Let me finish. Mm-hmm. That is a licensing arrangement with the Ministry of Energy. But most importantly, it's also a power purchase agreement with the Barbados Light and Power, because they're still the main entity for the distribution of electricity. So on both counts, I welcome you on the food security. One, we are encouraging a whole set of people to come and invest and do their planting. We're even encouraging people with aquaculture, not just crops. But that is private investment, not government. On the renewable energy, that involves licensing, and we will work with you to get through that, but we have no capacity to take up on our own now.
Okay, so with the Bridgen Foundation, for example, they don't work with a boot contract, but what they do need is an invitation, like you said, to come down in person. They need an invitation from government because that is their protocol. So what do you do in that case?
I want to suggest to you that if they are serious about doing business, they don't need an invitation from me. And that once they come, I give you in the presence of all, like we do with anybody else. Once they come, we will meet with them. But what we can't do is give letters of invitation to entities that we're not sure about and that we can't go into a guarantee with. So I'll be more than happy. My permanent secretary is right up there, and I suspect you've met with her before. And if you can engage with her, she's nodding her head, and ensure that we can have clarity as to which ones that are coming that don't need the guarantees. Once they don't need guarantees, we can talk business. But once you need guarantees, then believe you me, we have to go through a very, very rigorous assessment, because look, we have chosen as a government to incur debt for a geriatric hospital. You know why? Every time the rain set up, like last night, it rained hard in Barbados. Ask Jerome, the first thing the Ministry of Health does is to advise me as Prime Minister whether the patients at the geriatric hospital in Beckles Road going to move. Because they believe that it is not safe there, and of course those buildings were not purpose-built for people who are not capable of walking easily, as the doctors would say, not ambulatory. We have chosen to incur debt for things that will redound to the national, but anything that the private sector can easily do, or better do, we would prefer them to take it up and leave government to incur debt for the public goods. And all this talk I hear in Barbados about the amount of debt that this government has incurred, let me put it in context for you. We inherited it over 16 billion. Barbados's debt now is about 13.4, 13.5 billion. I don't have the exact figure in my head. 13.6 billion. Last time I checked, and it's not Kelmanomics, 16 is more than 13.6. And that is in spite of us having to continue to borrow in some way. Yes, to help keep the country afloat. But the reality is that you have everything I say, look at context. And the context of what we have done is effectively to reduce the debt and to reduce the debt service. Believe you me, if we had not finished the external debt restructuring, the 45 or 46 countries now globally that are on the edge of a precipice of a debt crisis, Barbados would have been at the head of those 46 countries. And therefore, that is why I salute Barbadians for allowing us to be able to make the difficult decisions within a week of coming into office. And all those who said that we couldn't do it and shouldn't do it with the IMF, let me tell you what our record is under the IMF and under this government. One, public servants that didn't get a wage increase for 10 years got a 5% wage increase. We had buses not working and people can't get home in St. Joseph, St. Andrew, St. Lucie, St. Peter until 8 and 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night waiting for buses from 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Barbados now has the largest number, both absolute and as a percentage, of electric buses in the Caribbean, English-speaking Caribbean. We bought virtually a new fleet of garbage trucks. And anybody who's been home recently, you will see that we're not finished yet, but the majority of the country has the garbage cans with the RFID chip, so that if somebody thief it, you know where the garbage can go. We bought $10 million of equipment from Public Works, and we are having to supplement that, but we're hoping to transfer that equipment to UCAL so that when we lease it back, we're leasing back equipment that's working. We built a new accident and emergency department, and let me speak to those wicked people who sent about a text today with the A&E with water coming through all the roof. That was long ago. It was fixed after it was built. It was one of the, what do you call it? The snags, defects, and the contractor, I'm told, had to fix it. We built the Barbados Water Authority. We literally, people in St. John, St. Joseph, and parts of St. George weren't getting water. And we had to build a new thing at Mount Pleasant and Vineyard. And all of those people are now getting water that were not getting water before. And we're doing it also in St. Lucie, and we're also working on the problems in Christchurch and St. Philip. And I can go on with the other things that we did. And we built a new hospital up at Harrison's Point to ensure that people who suffered from COVID would not have to go into Queen Elizabeth Hospital and put undue strain on the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And that, along with the, how much? 100 and something nurses from Cuba, and then about another 100 from Ghana. All of that we put in place while being in an IMF program. We reintroduced free tertiary education within 3 months of government while being in an IMF program. And I can go on because I'm only talking from the top of, we put a best program to sustain the tourism sector, ensuring that at least workers could get at least 80% of their wages because they were coming dangerously close to having to be severed, and neither the hotels nor the severance payments fund could have afforded to carry the costs if they were in fact severed. And in fact, that loan also allowed for us to lend to tourism establishments so that they can do refurbishment, because the worst thing you know you can do is shut up a building and don't flush toilets, don't turn on taps, don't do any of that. The building will eventually stop functioning and working. So I say all of this to you to say that, look, we are not finished the journey, but what others have not been able to do, we have been able to do and we still have $2.5 billion less almost of debt than what we first inherited because of the manner in which we've chosen to deal with it. We passed a Public Financial Management Act to improve the level of transparency and financial management in Barbados. We passed a new Central Bank Act to give the Central Bank greater independence than it had before in Barbados. And we've passed a new Planning and Development Act. It's given us a little teething problems, but it is because it is imposing more obligations and more assessments at different stages of the planning thing, and we're now reviewing it to see if we can streamline it. And I'm saying that to say that even though it is us who pass it, I don't believe that because our government did it that is perfect, that if we have to fix something that is not yet fully functioning, we will fix it. So what I want to say is that, look, we're open for business, but we don't have the fiscal space to give a lot of guarantees. I am fooling you, because our guarantees and our debt has to go primarily for those things that the private sector and individuals can't do on their own. Can't do a geriatric hospital on their own. I've got to do an expansion of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital on the other side of the road, where we decamp most of the bottom and try to take some services that can be on the other side of the road so that we can give more effective and efficient service in the QEH there. Randall Phillips Polyclinic in need of urgent action and rehabilitation. That has to be planned out too. So when we prioritize, I'm trying to say to you that we're focusing on those things that we have to do, but for the things that you want, we can facilitate. So speak to the PS and let us see how we can assist further in getting some. And on the renewable energy, most of the protocols are now there and the directives are now there. It's taken far too long, but it is there now. Thank you.
Yes, welcome, Madam Prime Minister. My name is Ricky Baker, and this is the closest I've ever been to you.
I get corrected and let you come and hug me, you know.
But you've been close to my dad, Ralph Walker, who created the Barbados Youth Service and the Poverty Alleviation Initiative. And I'd be remiss if I don't thank my sweetheart Waveney for registering me for this town hall meeting, because I'm seeing Barney Lynch, who ran track against me back in the 70s. There's a picture in my house with Barney and I and 440 relay and pen relays. So Barney, I'll show it to you one time. I have two soft questions. They're about entertainment. I also see Mr. Tony Best, who complimented me with my dad, who wrote some articles for me on my political career years ago. About entertainment. The Barbadian entertainers are struggling. And I have some very close friends who are entertainers in Barbados. And they're hurting really bad. I want to know when the hotel industry comes to you, and Barney could probably speak on this as well, come to you with their proposals. Can you tell them, well, you're coming to me with this, but this I want from you. I want you to create some nights, at least 2 nights a week for the local entertainers. They're really hurting really bad. And the second one is, second question, can Jackie Opel and the Merrymen get the highest honors that Barbados can offer? I mean, it might be something that not on your purview, but you're getting everything done, and I'm asking you these 2 questions.
2 points. One, on the entertainers, I agree with you. Look, COVID wreaked havoc, not just with entertainers, but a whole different class of business people, taxi men. I can go on and on with the categories of people who really smelled hell during COVID. I'm not sure if you're aware that the National Cultural Foundation tried to step in, and we did a number of digital concerts. We did a number of murals across Barbados. We did a number of things that wherever we could spend, in spite of having to do additional spending for COVID, that we could do with them. Because of that, we continue to remain engaged, and we hope now that we've started to turn the corner that they will see a return of income, and we will continue to work with them. I've urged the National Cultural Foundation where a number of them are capable of training others, get them involved in training so that they can receive also some funds, not just for performances, or not just for murals, or drama is an area, for example, that has literally just gone through the center. And I've said, look, we have too many school auditoriums that we can be hosting and allowing people to do plays 2-3 times a year in St. Lucie and St. John. If you go in those auditoriums, St. Lucie Secondary or Lodge School or a lot of the schools that we have, they're top class, top class. So we want them to train more people and for us to get a lively scene again in drama. But it has been hard. On Friday night, I met with the head of 1 or 2 studios up here. Many of you may not know, for example, that Barbados was the location for that Netflix series, Outer Banks, I think it's called. They did 2 series there. We're trying to promote Barbados more as a film destination and potentially to do soundstage, not just with Hollywood, but we have Ambassador Chad Blackman has been active. So, I'm glad that it doesn't only happen at home. Ambassador Blackman has been active in trying to get the promotion done also with Bollywood and with Nollywood. So this is, when I leave this job, I'm going to help make movies and make music. Okay. Jerome heard me say so already for the day.
The second question.
And Noel heard me say so. But so this is an area that I feel strongly about and we will continue to work on.
The second question pertained to Jackie Opel and the Marine.
And as much as I love to speak publicly, I've learned that those things for which I have a constitutional responsibility, I don't speak about publicly. God bless you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Prime Minister, Mayor Morley, and the entire panel. All right. Good evening, Prime Minister Morley and the entire panel. First, thank you and your administration for doing such a wonderful job. My name is Richard. I have 2 questions. The first one has to do with currently vacation rentals get no perks from the government. We must pay taxes on any night we rent to the government, but yet there are no benefits to us. Will there be a legislation to include vacation rentals in the future? And the second has to do with...
I'm not sure that I heard you. I don't know if you want to repeat it again, because it seemed muffled. I heard about taxation, vacation rentals, and no benefits.
Okay, sure. All right. Currently, vacation rentals get no perks from the government. We must pay taxes on any night we rent to the government, but yet there are no benefits to us. Will there be legislation to include vacation rentals in the future?
I disagree that there are no benefits. You get the benefits of the public infrastructure. If Barbados didn't have that public infrastructure, you wouldn't get the vacation rentals. But I'm willing to listen to you as to what else you feel should be put on the table, because we're not either an adamant government nor a government that knows everything. So I invite you to write to me in the same way that you have read what was written, and let me have an idea as to what you're thinking.
Okay, I definitely follow with that.
I am just conscious that there are 3, 5, 10, 12 people, so I'm going to ask people to be a little more rapid with their questions.
Okay. And the other thing has to do with the NIS program. I know that there are about, I guess, 3 public meetings to get feedback from the public. Is there, update as it relates to, I know it's not, as you had mentioned in the past, not something that is an emergency or something that, needs to be addressed right now, but I guess the general public just wants to know if there's any updates on that.
Well, I'm awaiting, as I said, the National Insurance Board has been undertaking wide consultation, and I expect that when they finish that consultation, they have a core group and an advisory group, and they will make recommendations to me as Minister of Finance, and collectively, between the Minister of National Insurance, the Minister of Finance, and the NIS Board, we will then agree on what goes to Cabinet for final approval. But we're not yet at that stage. I noted with very keen interest that the Nation newspaper carried stories about Grenada, and also the difficulties that Prime Minister Mitchell is trying to address in Grenada once again to ensure that you avert crisis. So, you know, I'm glad that we in the Caribbean are developing a capacity to manage strategically and not just do crisis response. And the NIS is a perfect example of that for us. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Honorable Prime Minister. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank CG for bringing you here. But I want to personally thank you for making me not a subject of the monarch for the first time in my life. I think it's an honorable thing. It's something that you would never thought that you would witness, which is like I'm a first immigrant to the United States. Never thought I would see another black president. To see the monarch no longer represented the subject, I truly thank you. And my question to you is, with the supply chain broken, all inflation high, gas high, the people in Barbados, I mean, if the United States are having a cold, they're having the flu. So if we can have a post-pandemic or post-COVID relief for the tariffs that we want to send items to our family members that's still there, we could be the supply chain for our own people. Rather than waiting for the big conglomerates to come in and bring in the ships, those barrels matter in time of Thanksgiving, Christmas, and things like that. But they can't get them out of the port if you got to pay 3 times what we pack that barrel for the family members to eat.
I hear you to be asking for relief of a monetary nature as opposed to relief from the scanning. Because as you know, the problem with the scanning is that a lot of the guns that have come into the country have come through that. But I hear you very clearly, and I believe that there may be some merit in what you're saying, and I'm not sure that the Minister of Finance will answer you publicly, but I think that I can speak to the Minister of Finance on your behalf.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, my name is Ricardo Bentham, and I'm a resident of the United States here in Queens. Thank you.
I hear you loud and clear. Trust me, there's been a lot of suffering.
And it could be temporary. It doesn't have to be permanent release.
I hear you more than you think.
Good evening, Prime Minister. The last time I was here, some years ago, I talked and asked you about having a strategic alliance between professors here in the U.S., like myself, and professors who work with Cave Hill campus. So this is just a reminder. I know it is not really time sensitive, but one of the things I'd like is for professors here in the U.S. to have a way to lecture at Cave Hill campus. I think that it would not just strengthen the relationships. I think that professors here have a lot to offer, as well as professors in Barbados.
Absolutely.
And I think having that strategic alliance would really help
You're pushing
students.
an open door, my dear. On Monday, I witnessed in Paris the principal of Cave Hill campus sign an agreement with one of the top universities in Paris, Sciences Po, about the exchange of both students and faculty. What I'd like to suggest, which institution are you at?
I teach at NJCU in New Jersey.
Sorry?
New Jersey City University in New Jersey.
Right, New Jersey City University.
Yes.
Okay, what I'll ask you to do is to speak to one of my permanent secretaries up there too, and let us put you in contact with Professor Landis, who's the principal at Cave Hill. And I know that also UWI has a relationship with SUNY here.
Yes.
And it has been one of its prouder accomplishments in recent years. So I'm sure that the more that they can enter these memoranda of understanding with, to facilitate exchange of not just faculty but also students, the richer the educational experience can be. And believe me, Barbados is in the business of educational tourism too. So we will work with you to help promote it. If you look up to the top, you'll see my permanent secretaries up there where somebody's handing them something now. Thank you.
Okay, one other question. How do we move business in Barbados? How do we be in a situation where we can have business move a little faster. So I get our background and our culture is very laid back. From a business perspective, there are times where we over here need to be able to get things moved a little faster. So here's an example. I tried to get the name of a business registered in Barbados. It took 6 weeks. And I get that.
I think you'll have a different experience going forward. We have, I'm telling you, we have just entered, we've just launched the digital platform that took almost a year to develop at the Corporate Affairs Registry, and we're now looking to open up the second part of it, which deals with the more complex registration processes that go beyond just simply the formation of a company, but go into articles of incorporation and other deeper corporate things. So I think that, look, we've inherited it. It took a while, and let us remember that 2 years, COVID robbed us of 2 years of activity. And in fairness, I had hoped that Minister Toppin, Ronald Toppin, because he did the work, he rolled up his sleeve, he did excellent work, and I'd hoped that he would be here for the resolution of the whole program. Regrettably, somebody I knew called an election, and he didn't run again. So he got the first launch of it, but he's not there for the completion of it. We're not yet fully where we want to be on facilitating business, and it is because we have to change not only legislative systems, we have to do training, and we have to change the culture. And those cultures that existed for decades is not easy to change overnight. And I ask people all the time, and in fact I reflected on it in the STG thing with the Secretary General this afternoon, that I've just asked people in every instance to identify what is the public policy. Let us deconstruct. What are we really trying to do? What's the public policy we're trying to serve? What's the public mischief we have to avoid? Can we use technology in a way that will help us do it more efficiently? That's what we did with certificates of character. That's what we're doing with the corporate registry. That's what we're doing with paying. Before we came in, you couldn't pay any fees or taxes online. You can do that now. You can get the certificate of character within minutes. And you can now get the corporate affairs registration quicker. But we're not finished the complete process because, as I said, the more complex aspects of it come out in October, November. And thirdly, who are we empowering and who are we disenfranchising when we make these changes? So I hope that we can continue we set ourselves the date of 2030. It was originally 2027, that Barbados should become world class. When I announced that on the 2nd of January 2020, we didn't know that COVID would knock us down for 2.25 years. It has. We've adjusted the date to 2030. Can this be done by simply by saying so? No. Will it be done by Barbadians rolling up their sleeves and recognizing that nobody owes us a living and that we have to be efficient and that we have to do business as quickly as we would because time is money? Yes. And it is that kind of change in systems, change in culture, change in legislation, and using technology to maximize processes. That's what we're busy doing now. Finally, the IDB, we borrowed $40 million to literally digitize a lot of our records because a number of the processes where people need help depend on being able to search databases. And therefore, we're literally going through the process of digitizing a lot of the records that existed in Barbados for decades and longer. So bear with us, but we will get there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, the Prime Minister has asked you to keep it tight. We need to keep it tight. Suni is going to give us a little leeway, but please keep it tight.
Those who know me in Barbados know that Jerome is going to take the next question or two because I have to go and do what you can't do.
Okay. Stick to the questions, please.
Yeah. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, that's actually perfect because my question is for you. Can you guys, my name is Vanya. I'm so happy to be here among so many Bajans and proud of our Prime Minister. My question is for Dr. Walcott. I presently work for a nonprofit in the capacity of a senior program manager for supportive housing. We provide on-site case management services to formerly homeless people, mentally ill, substance abusers, DV victims, and so forth. I'll definitely be registering, as Uncle Noel said, for the Foreign Affairs program online. Anyhow, I'm aware that there's a Barbados Alliance to End Homeless Shelter in Barbados, but I'm not sure whether there are any supportive housing agencies in Barbados. And I'm wondering, especially as you mentioned elder care, whether that would be something that would be feasible, where we provide studio apartments, maybe like two-bedroom apartments for people who have pre-existing conditions in terms of mental illness, substance use, who are not quite at the point where they need to be in a nursing home. They can still make contributions to society, but they might need assistance with regards to case management, medication management, ensuring they get to their medical appointments, connecting them to benefits and services that will help them to be functional in Barbados, contribute to the society, and not, deal with the labels of mental illness and mental wellness.
Thank you. Have you made any contact with any people in Barbados related to this, like who deal in mental health? Because you're speaking, I know we have started some halfway houses, similar to what you were speaking about, but have you made any contact with any Barbadians?
Yes, I did reach out to the Barbados Alliance a few years ago. I never heard back, and truth be told, I didn't follow up. But I know that's a shelter. I'm just speaking with reference to supportive housing. Do you think that's a model that would work in Barbados?
It can work, because right now the Ministry of People's Empowerment is looking at a more holistic, the whole issue of social services, where there are national assistance board, care of the elderly, all of these things. You're looking at bringing it under one umbrella. And the system you're speaking about could play a role in that. It would be useful. Sorry about that. It would be useful if I could get more information from you that I could then relate to the people on the Minister of People's Empowerment. Okay? Thank you.
Yes, I have two questions.
Can you give us your name, please?
My name is Isabel.
Could you repeat that, please?
Isabel. I am one of the one that choose to be a Barbadian. I was there the last time the Prime Minister was here. And earlier she said the one that got Barbadians in their mind and in their heart, I am one of them. So my question is, as I say, I've been in Barbados since 1972. And I've been here for 22 years, and I'm looking to retire back to Barbados the year coming in. My problem is when I went down there to find out what is my I put 19 years in the economy before I came here. I work in one company for 13 years, but now they tell me that I'm not qualified to get.
This is for national insurance?
National insurance.
How long?
And I put 13 years. One company alone was 13 years in the Harbor Road. I can remember in 1984, when Barbados was going through a recession, I was getting $79 a week with 2 children and house rent. And they take out $2.50 in order to keep their, you will understand what I'm talking about. I've been here. So I want to know why that if you put 19 years in a economy and now you turn in certain age, you're not allowed.
We couldn't tell you offhand, but what I give you the commitment, once again, my assistant is there. She's on the steps there with the red scarf. She'll take the information. My Director of Citizen Engagement, Mr. Roy Morris, he literally, every day, I get reports back from him answering and resolving issues that people have raised with us, either through meetings such as this, or through direct mail. So I would like you to give her the information and let us investigate it for you, because it certainly sounds strange.
A quick last one. No, just a quick last one. We and the people that been in Barbados from the 70s, that been in Barbados when Barbados was done out. We've been in Barbados. We've been there. You understand? Now, we cannot go to the polyclinic. The only thing I'm asking, can I go?
Hold tight. You go and talk to Shanta. Trust me.
Go up there.
Because all you talking to the government that get kicked out before, not this current government. You understand? So your information is dated.
Okay.
All right? But we can sort out the investigation for you, because it certainly seems strange to me.
Yes.
And as I said, the reason why I have a unit for citizen engagement in my office is because every day, literally, people are asking questions and we need to help them find the answers. It may not always be the answer that they want, but we're going to give them answers as far as our investigations can carry us. And that was one of the deficiencies with the structure of government, that we just were not responding to people. And Barbados had no system other than the very complicated system of ombudsman, which was too long and too complex. And this way now, we deal with the investigations ourselves with you. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, my dear.
All right.
All right, I'll be
And I'm
very.
glad to hear you're coming back to live. Thank you.
I'll be very quick. My name is Monique Chandler Waterman. I'm the New York State Assembly member in District 58 in the neighboring area, covering East Flatbush, a little bit of Crown House, Brownsville, and Canarsie. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being here in this moment. I want to thank downstate all the dignitaries, but because of you, I could be me. Because my grandmother migrated here years ago from Barbados. I am the first Black Caribbean immigrant, first American generation that is in this, covering this district as a woman here. So I just want to let you know, thank you.
And I know that you've come not to be the first, but to ensure that you're
continue.
not the last.
But because of you, we can see and look towards of what our future could be, to pave the way for Black women in leadership. So it's very hard, I know, to have your position and be in your place.
But I hear that you're the one that I should be congratulating. And I hope that all of the Barbadians here will own you and claim you and help you.
Thank you so much. So I just want to say I'm encouraged, I'm regenerated, and coming here today, even waiting on this line and hearing how you respond was very encouraging to all of us. So I just want to thank you for being you, and I just appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, and welcome to the neighboring District 58. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And let me say, if there's ever anything you need to work with us on, please let the Consul General know, or the permanent rep at the UN know, and the officers here will work with you. I agree with you. But that issue may require your help in truth, because the real issue there, quite frankly, I've never seen anything like it. On both sides of the Atlantic, what we have is a serious problem with the airline industry, and literally not having the staff to be able to put on the additional planes. Okay, and Ambassador Lynch, as you know, one of our best ministers of tourism and international transport, is also not just here to deal with diplomacy in Washington, but he's also working with the Ministry of Tourism and with other players that we have brought on board in order to be able to expand airlift, because it is only through expanded airlift that prices will drop. Right now, the airlines are trying to make up for all that they lost in COVID in 1 month.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, good evening, Prime Minister and your panel. My name is Sidney Jamont. I'm from North Plainfield, New Jersey. And I'm going back to the banking industry here again. As far as on the side of the business side of accounts, there's a lot of red tape, and it's very time consuming to open a business account in Barbados, and I don't want to go into that much deeper, but Mr. Walcott, he touched on it earlier about investing in African banks. So that being said, what's the incentives and initiatives that you have going forward to have more Barbadian-owned banks? And lastly, this one is closest to me. I have a brother in Barbados. I think he's probably the longest living person in Barbados on dialysis, most likely. He touched on some of the improvement at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. So what programs or improvements do you guys have actually now on the dialysis area, because based on my communication with him, it's been like a seesaw, a lot of stop and go.
Two things. With respect to the banks, you're going to see more competition. Not necessarily indigenous to Barbados in terms of ownership, but Barbadians will be part owners. I think it's no secret that Sagicor will have a digital bank that will be operating within a matter of weeks. The licenses have already been issued to them, and that digital bank, we hope, will bring some competition in the market. In addition to that, as you heard Jerome say earlier, there are some African banks that have expressed interest and are in early conversations with the central bank with respect to registration, and most of them have their own correspondent banking relationships as well. And you will find out, when we went to Kenya, the same thing that's happening to us now happened in East Africa, where the internationally owned banks, like Barclays, etc., were all there, and they all pulled out. And in fact, only this morning, I was on a panel with the owner, the owner of Equity Bank in Kenya, who went in and literally started to trust his own people. You know what I just tell you? He started to trust his own people. And their business went like that, right up in the air. Part of the difficulty that we have, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, if the people who assess risk do not know what risk looks like or feels like in their community, they will always ask for more than they need. And that's partially what we are fighting. The absence of correspondent banking, the debanking of individuals within existing sectors, the threat of fines and punishment, so that people now, instead of wearing a belt, they want a belt, a suspender, and a hoist. And that's the kind of attitude that we have. I was quarreled with and cursed by some Trinidadians for saying that when you receive 0.001% as interest, you are effectively paying the banks to keep your money. And the only body I know you pay to keep something is a security guard. So that, you know, but the reality is that it is my judgment that the kinds of deals that we are being asked to accept in the developing world, as compared to what is allowed in the developed, few developed countries, in particular the G7 countries, is completely disproportionate. And it is not in favor of us in the developing world. That is why we are encouraging the participation of other regions into our domestic banking sector, and we want as much competition as possible, because we believe with competition, better opportunities will come. The other thing is that it seems to us that the banks change their business model to be one that profits from fees, as opposed to from the traditional role of lending and letting money work for you within the banking system. With respect to the dialysis, Jerome can add to it, but last Friday, it was a week ago Friday, when we opened the ground, when we did the groundbreaking for emergency facility at Bayview Hospital, I made the point that Barbados is suffering from an epidemic with respect to diabetes, and that the consequences of that epidemic, if we do not rein it in, will come to be too heavy a burden for us to bear as people, but also as a government. Part of the difficulty with dialysis is the explosion in the numbers of Barbadians who now rely on dialysis as a result of an inability to control other conditions which they had before. We are going to continue, and there's a public-private approach that we have towards dialysis for that reason. So we long accepted that we could not provide for all of the dialysis patients at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And therefore there are partnerships with other private entities and even philanthropic entities, as we have at the upstairs, the Barbados Diabetes Foundation in my constituency. I want, through you, and I'm going to do it every time I speak and every time somebody asks me a question on this, And I don't pretend it's easy, because if it's easy, I would lose more weight already too. I ain't fooling you. And that's why I keep talking about measuring and trying and measuring and trying. But we have to win this battle. And we have to win it first and foremost because we want to live. And we have to win it because our families need us to live. And we have to win it because also our government cannot afford the costs of paying for a population that has allowed diabetes to run rampant. And the consequences of amputation, the consequences of blindness, the consequences of dialysis, the consequences, you're the doctor, not me, all the other things that can come from it. You understand? It's just too heavy a burden for us to carry. And if we are also recognizing, as I said earlier, that we are an aging population, we do not need our young people to be coming down with type 2 diabetes in the large numbers that they're doing. And that is why I put Dr. Sonia Brown in there with the responsibility of chronic NCDs and wellness. I've asked, and COVID really, as I said, put difficulties, but we're going to have coordinated programs going forward with respect to movement and wellness to make sure that everybody gets on board in controlling it. Jerome mentioned earlier the initiative that we put in place for community outreach from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital so that we can target as much as 2,000 of the most serious chronic patients with respect to NCDs, going to them where they live and not simply depending on them to come to the outpatients clinic at the QEH. That is because we want to see what they're eating and help them eat properly. We want to make sure that they're taking the medication, and we want to make sure that they're doing the measurements properly. We've also agreed, and the Minister of Health is doing it now, is it called HbA1c test that tells the truth. That's the diabetic lie detector test, I'm told. That how much ever you tell the doctor you weren't doing it, that test is going to tell the doctor the truth. And you know, there used to be a time for other things. They used to say, know your status. Well, I'm inviting every Barbadian, not just in Barbados, but the ones up here like you, for all of us to know our status. Yes, today, losing time, Friday, I met with the head of the International Finance Corporation, IFC, Maktar Diop. And one of the things we discussed was the whole question of genome mapping and the absence of pharmaceuticals that are appropriate to black people, and how we are going to work with Africa to be able to see how we can do both the research as well ultimately the encouragement or investment in those pharmaceuticals so that the level of efficacy with respect, what do you call it, pharmacological efficacy, sound like a lot of big words. In other words, what we take will work better with our genes because of our particular genetic makeup. And it's like going into a store and buying clothes that are made for Caucasians who don't have big breasts or big bottoms. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because it then means that the clothes are not fitting you in the way that you're supposed to wear, and you buy it because there's nothing else. Well, we can't continue buying medication that is not really designed for people of our race. And that's what we're trying, these are some of the big battles that we're trying to fight globally, because at the end of the day, it is going to reduce the level of expenditure and reduce the incidence, we hope, of diabetes getting out of hand, such that they end up with people going into dialysis or going into blindness or other conditions. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings, Madam Prime Minister. My name is Wayne Clark. I'm from My Time Inc. My Time Inc. focus on, we provide support for parents with children with autism and developmental disabilities. We decided to focus on the parents because the child would always get the services, but the parents are often left behind. So I would like you to talk about autism and developmental disabilities in Barbados. Thank you.
Well, only today, the Minister of People Empowerment is in the Sunday Sun, not to advertise, but is in the Sunday Sun talking about supporting a charity in Barbados with persons who want to be able to cater to kids who have special needs. We've also been doing it. The truth is that I would have liked by now to be able to say to you that we could also have that hospice that will allow for respite for parents who need a break. We're not yet at that stage because right now it's juggling priorities. And I've told you we're doing a new geriatric hospital. We had to do Harrison's Point Hospital, and for the record, those of you who don't know what Harrison's Point entails, Barbados had how many intensive care beds before COVID? About 35, 40. And now with Harrison's Point, after COVID, we have over 130 intensive care beds separate in St. Lucie with all of the equipment that is necessary for those intensive care beds to function. So what I'm really saying is that 3 years ago, I would have told you that we would have had that hospice almost immediately. Because of the expenditure that we've had to divert away for the purposes of COVID, it is now a little lower on the list. And why? Because we've had the Albert Graham Center that the government of Barbados would have helped and assisted, and I think we support on an annual basis with the recurring expenditure as well. So hold tight, help us get more investment and more growth, and the quicker that we can do that, the quicker we can close some of these gaps where we feel people may fall through the net. And one of the things I saw only recently too is that there are trials that are looking very hopeful for people with MS as well, likely to start coming about, because these are the people who, for example, at home have a hard time, even in terms of accessing medication and other things, and we've tried to work with them to try to get a better deal for them. Okay?
Thank you.
Minister Walcott, Senior Minister, is reminding me that you may want, sir, that you may want to ensure that this is an area in which the diasporic community can also supplement the assistance that we need.
I had a conversation with the Consul General about
Okay. So I'll get him to follow up with you. Thank you, my dear. Yes,
Welcome.
ma'am. Thank you. Well,
You should stay Prime Minister forever. You're
Don't do
the
that.
boss. I love you. You're doing a fantastic job.
Thank
This
you.
is the second time I'm seeing you. I saw you at Macy's in Roosevelt 50 years ago. And you were so humble and so nice. You made an impression on me. So I'm not surprised the way that you are. However, my husband and I, we didn't decide to go back home at all, because most of my family is gone. But we went one day on vacation. He said, what are we doing? So we decided we build a house, storehouse gap. But like the banks, I don't have a bank account in Barbados. I have an account at the credit union, because they give me, like, you come with money. I ain't coming $1 million. And so I just took my money, I came back. But we're in the process now, want to move back. So my question, as they would say, they have the gas, natural gas on the lower road. They don't have it up by where we live. Is there any plans or anything to get in natural gas up there?
what I want you to do is, I don't want you to tell me where you live in, because somebody might want to come and trouble you where you give your address. So, Ashanta, find out, and we will let you know whether that is in the immediate plans of NPC when we go back. But let me say this, that we have been speaking to the management of NPC and BNOC and say, look, we really need to see how we can have an aggressive capital works program for natural gas going forward. Because the more we are seeing, separate from the renewable energy, that because of the supply constraints for the photovoltaic panels and the batteries and lithium, we're going to still need to do some more expansion of natural gas in the interim, because we don't know where the world is going. So it's going to be a bridging fuel, and therefore we will find out. But just tell Ashanta where you live. I don't want you to say that by the mic, and we will find out for you.
One more favor, I would like to take a picture of you before I go.
Absolutely, my dear.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, too. I like the sneakers. Anybody see? You all see the head stay. You don't see the sneakers? The sneakers are the Barbados flag. And the laces too, yellow. I love it. Yes, sir.
Welcome, Prime Minister Motley. My name's Mgavi Lambe Brathwaite. My great-grandfather worked as an electrician in Barbados. My grandparents came here in 22 and 24. My father, Lambe Brath, was the foremost Pan-Africanist, and he often talked about how Barbados was the closest geographically to Africa, but didn't look towards it, and I wish he was here because he'd be happy to see the work that you're doing and the direction you're taking.
Thank you.
I'm a computational biologist in bioinformatics. You were just talking about genome mapping. I've been doing that for 30 years here in the United States. I've worked at NIH. I run a graduate program where we teach, I'm actually teaching physicians how to use the genetic information to match it with the patients. So it's a big data approach. And I'm wondering how, and I'm interested in how, you touched on some of this also, but how Barbados is going to use that in their healthcare system, also environmental stuff, public health, marine biology. I understand that because of the environmental changes, that Barbados may not be, so they might not, the way the hurricanes would pass over, that might not be the case in coming future, and I know that coral reefs play a role in that. So that's just my question, what are those projects? And I will be registering on the database.
Thank you, and before you even register on the database, I'd like you to speak to the senior minister before you leave this evening, because he will tell you about the project that was at UWI when he was Minister of Health. And the truth is that, I don't know if you know Juliette Daniel as well, Dr. Juliette Daniel. Juliette went to school with me, but she does research in Canada and would have done research for a gene that apparently is present with triple-negative breast cancer, and she named it the Calypso gene. She's from Culloden Road there, so appropriate. But it is up to us, and that's why this database, Ambassador, is so important, Consul General is so important, because we need to know about people like you. And ma'am, the lady who opened the baton, you realize that he is his great-grandfather and grandparents, so that he is 2 generations removed and still identifying with Barbados and still wanting to help. You understand? And his father was one of the foremost Pan-Africanists that laid the platform.
And you talked about, and a lot of your sisters that have their hair natural, they can attest that to the work that my father and my uncle did. Yep. And my uncle's work is, and it's documented at the New York Historical Society, my Uncle Kwame Brathwaite.
Yep. And that's why I say there are a lot of Bajans who were involved in different aspects from the Harlem Renaissance right back through to critical parts of the development in this country. And we need to tell our story. But we can only tell our story if you help us tell it, because you guys are the repository of those stories. And the database is the first step in terms of getting people to work in real time today. But an allied aspect of it, and I know the ambassador and the consul general are keen on it, is also to be able to get as many of the other Barbadians saying, basically, and telling us what that story is and how we can build upon it. Okay, so thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Honorable Prime Minister Mia Motley. It is so fabulous to be here, and I'm so happy that you came here to speak to us. I really want to commend you. Everything, you hit everything. All the questions I had, you answered. I watched your testimony at Congress, the entire 3 hours. That was a big concern for mine, because I go home, I would like to open an account to have my little vacation money. I can't do it. I opened it, it was so much, it was beyond.
Hold tight, hold tight.
Oh, thank you. I want to return. I'm going to get back to the First Lady. I'm a nurse. I want to come back. I hope there's not too much red tape getting my license and everything coming back. I want to return before I retire. So, next 2 years. So I'm not looking to, so I...
And you're a nurse?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
so
great. And you will bring others back with you?
Of course. My husband came to Barbados. He wanted to pack up and leave and be there immediately. He's from Guyana. So I want to return. The banking is going to be good. I have to commend you for everything. I'm ready. So you have just sealed the deal. I thank you so, so much.
Thank you. And let me say, look, we need people to rebuild our country. We do not have enough people in Barbados coming to work every day.
I'm ready.
to help
JetBlue is
build
too
it out.
expensive.
And if we can
I'm
get,
ready. I am so
if
ready.
we can get Bajans,
One way, it's fine. I'm so
second,
ready.
third, fourth generation Bajans, come on down.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So hi, good evening, everybody. Good evening, Prime Minister. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud to be a Bajan. My name is Dr. Kemi Maskell Robertson. I'm a neonatologist. That means I'm a newborn baby ICU specialist. And I came here just less than 2 decades ago. I think being in the room, having trained on the East Coast and living in the Midwest for close to a decade, not around all of these Bajans, actually none, I felt very emotional and a pride, for the pride and just the industry that's been in this room. So thank you for gifting me that. Unfortunately, my mom had surgery 2 weeks ago. She's fine. And I really want to say that the care that she received from a lot of my colleagues, whether it be surgeons or anesthesiologists, was exceptional. I certainly did my medical school in Jamaica and Barbados, and I am very proud of the quality of care that they can provide in terms of just their expertise. However, I feel somewhat obligated, as I am grateful to them. I feel very obligated to, be a voice to them, having heard all of the red tape and challenges and concerns that they are having at the QAH. And I know you have had it your full for this, but it would be remiss of me to not share that. So there is a dire need and shortage of nurses, and they think that it is impacting the quality of care that is being provided. They're concerned that the specialty nurses are also quite affected, and they're really, really concerned that we have patients that are dying before they can get the care. And I wondered what we are doing to help that, whether it be a shortage of auxiliary staff or nursing staff, the quality of, what did he mention to me? He mentioned, just now I was texting the surgeon and the professor who's now retired, but they're very, very concerned. They're very, very concerned about the COVID restriction, because people who have COVID and have emergencies need to survive too. And they feel like that there are a lot of restrictions that are preventing patients from getting the surgeries, and also that there are concerns with the elective cases not opening up as well. We talk about the chronic diseases, but in order to prevent patients from needing, life-threatening surgeries, they need to be cared for electively also. And COVID, because you have COVID doesn't mean that you don't need care, right? So.
Trust me, these are issues that are occupying our attention. With respect to the nurses, how many, I think we're getting, 150 from Ghana? Another 150 will be coming from Ghana soon. Part of the difficulty for the entire Caribbean is that we can't compete with the prices, the salaries that nurses are paid in North America and Europe, but yet we still need them. That is why we are training as many as we can. That is why we got to the bottom. When we came into government, we inherited a situation where the failure rate in the nursing classes was, over 60–70%? And to all credit to Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostic, he sat with them and we understood that they were literally training to the wrong standards and the wrong curriculum. That has been reversed. We had a situation, and we will continue to pay as well as we can, but whether we like it or not, is $1 US to how much? To 2 of us.
Yes.
So whatever you do, you're going to get, obviously, a greater value up here, and then you have prices up here. It's also commensurate. I don't know that I would want to fall ill in the US if I didn't have insurance, because the prices that are charged for people to access medical services in this country allow them to pay at a much higher rate to professionals and nurses and ancillary staff than we could ever afford. The bottom line is that this is trying to correct decades of difficulty. And I feel that we have seen some progress, but we have not yet seen as much as we would like. And we will continue to apply ourselves to it. And it's largely as a result of some institutional structures, but some, as I said, lack of competitiveness in terms of what others can get elsewhere. And then finally, for us being able to correct some things with respect to the financing of healthcare. Healthcare in Barbados is hybrid. It's both public and private. And the WHO has agreed that it will send us people to supplement the work that we've been doing on health financing so that we can see how best we can improve those aspects of it. So I want to say to you that in spite of all of that, for the most part, Barbados is capable of delivering health care at a very high level. And that those aspects of it that are defective in terms of where the gaps exist are things that are driving us day in and day out to get it right, because I genuinely believe that agriculture and the healthcare systems were the stepchildren of a post-independence Barbados. And I'm not saying so now. If you go back and do the research, you'll see that ever since 2018, I made the point that agriculture and health would receive our attention because we felt that they were the stepchildren of Barbados. And we did not know then that we would face the first pandemic, global pandemic in 100 years, and we did not know then that we would have the kind of inflationary spiraling as a result of war in Europe that would lead to food security being one of the most important issues for our people as we go forward. So we will continue to work on these areas. Jerome, I don't know if you want to add to it because you have a more direct management.
I spoke to some of these things earlier, and that we were making improvements. But I don't know. I know that we're under constraints now.
Yes, we really are.
Yeah, so, you know.
Sinke.
Thank you, but I yet again, because they're on the front line and because I'm dealing with, you know, people who are there, the surgeons, the nurses and so on, we definitely, you know, they tell me their morale is very low. So it seems to be critical. This is urgent. I think this is a lifeline.
And trust me, we are treating it with urgency.
Yeah.
Hold on.
We expect the nurses to be here in a week or so.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And the process of getting the nurses takes months. Yes. So they wouldn't be here in a week if we weren't working with this batch. And this is the second batch from Ghana that's coming in. And we also have the nurses from Cuba that have helped us manage the system because of the shortage.
Yeah.
Okay?
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathleen.
Oh, thank you.
And we have 3 minutes, folks.
Okay, all right. Good evening. My name is Kathleen Cummins. After living here for over 40 years, I'm ready to come back to Barbados because I feel I have a lot to offer to Barbados. But I ran into a brick wall, and it's called a squatter that's living on my property. Can't get them off at all. The money that I'm looking to retire with is what I'm spending now to try to get this squatter off of my property. Feels like the squatters have more rights than the owners. What?
Not really, but the truth is that you know that as Prime Minister I am in the court. So,
but that's my life.
I wish I could help you by just saying that. But once a person is there under the Constitution, they have certain rights, and you got to go through the legal system, same as up here. But let's talk and see, because as I said, I don't like people talking out the business in public.
Right, I don't, yeah.
So we will talk after and see how best we can advise you as to what may be the best route for it. But come home. 40 years is a long time.
I want to. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Real quick, Mayor, I haven't heard anybody mention about crime in Barbados or young youths are killing one another. What are we doing to correct that problem?
Tony, apparently we have to give up the auditorium, and you come home all the time, so you need to talk to me up here.
Why not? They said no. It's okay.
Barbadians, let us be respectful. We've been allocated a certain time. We're way over that. You're going to want to take pictures. So we're going to call it a wrap. I want to thank, obviously, Prime Minister Morley. Dr. Walker, Ambassador Lynch, glad you've come down to see how we do it in New York. Want to thank the team at Downstate for their graciousness. Want to thank the staff at the consulate and the mission, and everyone, those of you who've come from out of state and long journeys. Thank you. Some other things will be happening. The Constitution Reform Commission will be coming to do some hearings, and I know that that is something you would want to participate in. We're sorry we have to cut it short. Sinke, thank you, but we speak all the time. Thanks, folks. Have a good night. Get home safely.